You can stand on a beach, feel the warm morning sun on your face, and completely miss the fact that a wall of water is heading straight for you. That's how storms work. They don't give you a courtesy call. They just build out over the blue horizon, waiting while you enjoy the view. When I posted the video, lead follower, get out of the way, friends and colleagues were alarmed and said, listen, you're living an incredible life in a paradise. So why are you wasting your energy caring about politics that you don't even live in anymore? I grappled with that because you can't just turn off human empathy when you change your zip code. I watched that content again recently at the prompting of another creator who inspires others to keep going even when creating is a struggle. Anyway, that video captures our evolution, a moment of shock revolution. The storm is here. Looking back at it, I see a snapshot of our internal struggle millions of Gen Xers are facing, realizing the storm is here and grasping for the words to navigate this deluge. Before that, during the 2024 election cycle, we still had this belief that the three branches of government meant something. The judicial and the legislative branches were capable and would keep the executive branch in check. The outcome of the election was a shock, and the result was a cold water wake up call. We realized the creeping authoritarian rhetoric, the corporate influence, the breakdown of public institutions weren't just fringe noises, they were the main event. So what do we do when the climate and the weather or politics, our culture turns hostile? How do we cope? Well, I think we seek relief first. We doom scroll, we grab a drink, we tune out and pretend the dark clouds aren't moving in our direction. It's a denial system. We reach for anything that gives us a temporary break from the internal friction of living inside a system that feels fundamentally broken. But here's the trap. Every time we ignore the thunder on the horizon, we buy 5 minutes of fake peace and we erode our own self-trust. We tell ourselves we're awake, but that we're critical thinkers, yeah, but then we let algorithms keep us pacified while politics and policies that affect our families and our healthcare and our retirement get dismantled in broad daylight. Their heads are in the stand. It's easy to blame the politicians or the media, but part of rebuilding self-trust is admitting when we fell asleep at the wheel. Discomfort isn't a signal to tune out, it's the price of admission for staying free. Stoicism had it right. The storm isn't a punishment, it's the test. A seed buried under dark soil breaks under pressure so it can grow. Self-awareness means standing on the beach, looking straight at the storm and refusing to lie to yourself about what's coming. To understand how so many of us miss the warning signs leading up to 2024, we have to look back at our baseline. We were raised on hose water, key around the neck independence, and absolute institutional authority. School principals in the 80s used wooden paddles on our butts. Chauvinism was built into the school hallways. We were told to smile more, work hard, suck it up, keep going. Our primary survival strategy was tuning out the noise and relying on our own grit. But that grit became our vulnerability. We got so good at putting our heads down and enduring bad behavior that we didn't notice when the bad behavior scaled up from regional politics to national policy. A huge chunk of Gen Xers entered public service in education and healthcare, thinking we could change or at least contribute to these systems and in return have a quality of life that provides a fulfilling career. Many of us gave up 20 or 30 years to public institutions like the middle school I worked at in Anchorage, Alaska. Over 700 kids. 52% of those children are English language learners. Brilliant kids from Pacific Islands, um, Alaska Natives, Asians, Blacks, Latino backgrounds. Beautiful, raw microcosm of humanity. For those Gen Xers who chose public service as our career field, we stayed put, believing that our institutions provided a kind of protection against racism and bigotry and corporate influence that the business world had to deal in. No, not us. But that turned out not to be true. I didn't realize how eroded the foundation was until the 2024 storm blew the doors right off the hinges. People love to debate culture wars, but if you want to understand how the ground was prepared for our current political landscape, you follow the money. It wasn't just ideology that weakened our public systems, it was corporate greed. Look at the numbers. From the 1970s to today, curriculum spending went from 5 billion to 150 billion. Corporations realized that public education wasn't a civic good, it was an untapped market. In the 80s, standardized testing became a product. In the 90s, corporate consolidation wiped out local choice. In the 2000s, federal mandates turned fear into a business model. And in the 2010s and 2020s, they linked public funds into this reoccurring digital software subscriptions. We stopped educating citizens and started serving corporate vendors. And when you strip public institutions of their civic soul and replace it with corporate bottom lines, you leave the public defenseless against political demagogues. That corporate pipeline laid the highway that brought us straight to this post 2024 reality. The strategy behind this political movement was never to convince you or I with better ideas. It was what Steve Bannon famously quoted, flooding the zone with shit. Flood the public with so much noise, outrage, and daily absurdities that reality bandwidth is completely overloaded. And it worked. Up until the 2024 election, millions of people were simply too exhausted to look at the horizon. Remember that middle school I worked at with Pacific Islanders, Latinos, Native Americans, Asians, Africans? The majority of teachers and administrators voted MAGA. They voted for racial profiling, the loss of due process, and cutting funds to the population of students that we served. Then the aftermath came. We were all shocked. Logic couldn't touch it because the zone was flooded. The fog was thick. You can't argue using logic on things that are not logical. And the warning signs had been swallowed up by the noise. We watched friends, colleagues, family members normalize things that would have been condemned a decade ago. I recently asked a school principal I once considered a friend what his students and staff and family would think if they found out he was MAGA. He called me a mentally ill communist. It's like the power is out, the lights are off, and he doesn't know it. Now, standing in the cold light of where we are, Gen X faces a stark choice. Option A, keep your head down, fake a smile, ignore the dark skies, and numb yourself until retirement. And then in retirement, do the same. Option B, reevaluate, step out of the illusion, and adapt to the environment as it actually is. Yeah, standing here, watching the rain bucket down over the ocean, there's a quiet clarity that comes with stopping the denial. The storm is no longer approaching, it's here. The 2024 election was the turning point that forced many of us to realize that the old normal isn't coming back to save our careers. Leaving a long career, packing your life into a couple bags, moving across the ocean, or simply refusing to participate in the institutional lives wherever you are, requires a kind of steel nervous system. This, courage isn't staying on a flooded shoreline just because you stood there for 20 years. Courage is recognizing when the weather has changed, seeking higher ground, building something resilient on your own terms. We have to stop assuming authority equals integrity, or that money and power equal a wiser system. People and systems reveal what they are through their actions, not through their words, and certainly not through their campaign slogans. If today's reflection hit home, if you're a Gen Xer looking at the current political and corporate landscape, realizing you missed the early signs, but you're ready to build self-trust anyway, check out my book, Mental Wealth Journey, available on Amazon. The links are below. You can also support this independent, unsponsored channel by subscribing to Substack, Island Punk, or grabbing me a coffee on the link below. We're using this space to document what it actually takes to stay clear-headed, build autonomy, and adapt when the weather turns. To my fellow Gen Xers, educators, and expats watching the downpour, when did you realize the storm was already here? And what are you doing to build a shelter? Until next time, lead, follow, get out of the way.